if you've just purchased an EV or you're thinking of purchasing an EV, then you've probably got something called range anxiety. So I'm going to show you a few ways to help improve the range of your EV by using these 9 or 10 simple tips and tricks. And at the end, there's a little bonus app that you may find useful. So please like and subscribe and enjoy the video. Thank you. So the first one here is probably one of the most important: acceleration. The faster you accelerate, the more power you're going to use. It's the same in an internal combustion engine. You plant your foot, you use more petrol or diesel. Well, it's no different in an electric vehicle. The more you accelerate fast, the more power you're going to use. So the best thing to do is to accelerate slowly. Every now and again, plant your foot if you must. But the majority of time, just accelerate at a very reasonable rate. I tend to accelerate a little bit too fast. That's me. You compare my driving with my wife's, and I'm pretty sure a blooming snail could accelerate faster than her, but then she gets a lot better economy out of our Tesla. So first one is acceleration. Take it easy. So the next tip is about regenerative braking. So this is when the slowing down of your vehicle puts energy back into the battery. So a good idea is, if you've got a car that you've got different levels of regenerative braking, to stick it on the maximum. In a Tesla, there really isn't any different setting. So you just drive, and when you know that you're coming up to a stop sign or red traffic lights or a junction, take your foot off the accelerator and let it coast towards the junction. Obviously, you've got to be careful with any cars around you and safety and so on. But the more that you can use regenerative braking, the better. So along with regenerative braking, the next thing to do is to use the cruise control as much as you can. With my Tesla, it's got a traffic aware cruise control, so it will detect cars slowing down in front of you and slow down and use the regenerative braking. So this is probably better for you with getting the maximum range using the cruise control. The other thing that it does is, when it accelerates, it doesn't accelerate rapidly. It takes it fairly easy. And if you've noticed, when you've got the traffic aware cruise control and you're sitting at traffic lights and then you say, okay, go, they're green, all the other cars seem to beat you off at the line. Yeah, I know we can beat them off at the line most of the time, but it is maintaining a level of efficiency to help extend your range. So use the cruise control. And then, along with acceleration and cruise control and regenerative braking, we come to speed. Teslas go fast. In fact, a lot of electric vehicles can go quite fast and accelerate quickly to get there. But the faster you go, the more air resistance you've got and the higher the fuel consumption. It's the same in an ICE vehicle, but it's even more pronounced in an electric vehicle. Whilst Teslas are pretty aerodynamic, even increasing the speed by 10 kilometers an hour can make at least a 10% difference in the fuel economy. And what you'll notice if you're using the navigate to a destination, and the car detects that you're going to be a bit low on battery by the time you get there, it will actually come up and suggest that you slow down to a certain speed in order to use less power and get to your destination safely. I did a test myself, and I went at 90, 100 and 110 kilometers an hour down the freeway, and I tried it on different road surfaces because that can play a part. And it was about 10% difference. So slowing from 110 to 100, 10% extra. You'll have spare at the end. It'll use 10% less. Slowing down from 100 to 90, you'll get another 10%. With ICE vehicles, you'll find that around about the 90 kilometers an hour or 50 miles an hour is probably the optimum for them for their fuel efficiency. With an ICE vehicle, it's a lot lower. So slowing all the way down to say 60 kilometers an hour, you're going to get pretty good fuel economy. So, and I've done a couple of experiments on this. If I drive at about 60, I'm getting around 100 watt hours per kilometer. If I drive at double that speed, no, I don't drive at double that speed, 110, it's up to about 175 to 180 watt hours per kilometre. So that's a huge difference. That's going an increase of 50 kilometres an hour uses another 70 to 80% of power. So if you find yourself running out of power, slow right down. Obviously, you've got to adhere to the law of the land, and certain dual carriageways have got minimum speed limits, or if you are on a single carriageway, make sure that you keep out of the way of other traffic and pull over. But it's one way of extending your range. Tyres. Teslas tend to come with low rolling resistant tyres. You can get slightly different tyres. With the Model 3 Performance, it uses stickier tyres, so they've got a higher rolling resistance. But with my Model 3 rear wheel drive or standard range plus, it comes with pretty low resistance tyres, so that helps with the fuel economy. The other thing that you can do with the tyre is ensure it's at the correct pressure. So with the Model 3 that I've got, it comes with some tyres, and the recommended pressure on those is 42 psi, which is actually higher than a lot of other cars. I tend to run mine a bit higher than that, around the 45, 46. All these are cold inflate pressures, because that way it actually increases the range a little bit. Not a lot, but it does increase the range a little bit. Yes, it can make the ride a little bit more bumpy, but it does help improve efficiency. Just be careful. There's a maximum inflate pressure usually on the side of wall of the tyre, could be 50 psi. Do not go above that. That is cold inflate. When you're driving and you're driving at high speed, and the tyres will warm up and the pressure will increase. These pressures are cold inflate pressure. So it's 42 psi recommended on the car, and that recommendation is just inside the driver's door. So if you open up the driver's door, there's a plaque sitting on the frame there. As I said, I run mine at 45. I do know people that run theirs a little bit higher than that. But certainly ensure your tyre pressures are up at around the recommended figure, because once you get down to say 38, you may get your tyre pressure warning coming up on the dashboard, and then you are using more fuel than you need. Another little tip that might help improve the range is to avoid heavy traffic where you're stopping and starting a lot, such as in a big traffic jam. You might think, oh, but I'm using regenerative braking, but you're also using the acceleration to get up and slow down. The regenerative braking probably only recoups about 25% of what you use to get up to that speed. So you're using a lot of fuel or electrons to get up to that speed and then coast and get 25% of it back. So if you can, try and avoid big traffic jams. If you use the Tesla Navigate, it can save you some time, if you ask it to, by rerouting you to a different area that will save you time, and therefore it will have less traffic. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it's going to make a little bit of difference. The HVAC system, or heating, ventilation and cooling, which is your air conditioning. If you've got a heat pump, which the newer Teslas have got, it still makes a fair bit of difference. But my older Model 3, which is now over 2 years old, has got the old-fashioned air conditioning in it, and the heating is a resistive heater, and that can fairly chew through the power in the battery. Now, ways to minimize that are turn off the HVAC system. Yeah, some people just don't like doing that. I don't like doing that. But you can adjust the temperature. So if you want to cool down your car, you set a slightly higher temperature and it will cool down to that. If you want to heat up your car, set a slightly lower than that temperature so it'll heat up to that. I do that with my air conditioning at home. So my air conditioning at home is set to 25 to cool down to, but only 22 to heat up to. And that way I save power at home. Well, you can do the same in your car. Set it up 1 or 2 degrees and see how well it feels when it's cooled it down, or lower the temperature to allow it to heat up. Now, in really cold climates, using the resistive heating can chew through the juice a bit, and it's probably better to knock that temperature down a bit and use your seat heaters. That will heat you up. It doesn't apply over here in Perth, Western Australia. The temperature today, when I'm recording this, is set to hit over 40 degrees centigrade, which is 100 and something in Fahrenheit. So it's quite warm, and I don't need heating. I do need air conditioning. The other thing that you can do is to precondition your cabin in your car while you're at home, parked in your garage or carport, and the car's plugged in. You won't be using your battery to heat or cool the interior of your car. It will use the power from the charge port. So if your car's plugged in and it's really, really cold and you want the car to be nice and toasty, precondition the cabin, heat it up first, because then you're going to use less power to keep it there. And the same with cooling. Cool it down. When I go out like I did this morning and it was in the high 30s, so around 100, I went to the shopping centre. I plugged it in. Didn't really need much power, but I plugged it in and left the air conditioning running. And I was using the shopping centre's power to keep the interior of my car cool. Half, 3/4 of an hour later, when I came back, we jumped in the car and my wife goes, "Oh, it's quite pleasant in here, isn't it?" She didn't know that I'd left the air conditioning on. So it does make a difference. Precondition and set the temperature to a reasonable level, and hopefully that will save you some power. The next little tip is to minimize the weight that you'll carry. Now, my Model 3 weighs about 1.65 tons. the battery pack is a pretty heavy item. But I used to drive around with a lot of stuff in the boot. You don't need all that stuff. You need to check to see what you've got there. Take out the stuff that you really don't need. If you're going away and you put a spare tyre in there with a jack and so on, that's fine. But for day-to-day driving around, minimise the amount of excess weight. Yeah, I know I've got to lose weight, but that might help a little bit. But just double check. It's only a small thing that can make a bit of a difference, but try it and see. Cold weather. As I've already intimated earlier in this video, in Western Australia, we don't really get cold weather. People I know in Northern America, Canada, Britain, Europe, it does get bloody cold there, and there's a lot of snow and so on. What you'll find is in cold weather, your battery will work less efficient. You won't have anywhere near the same range as you would when it's nice and toasty. So just like with the HVAC system, improving the condition within the cabin before you get into it, whilst it's plugged into a wall socket or your charger, you can do the same with the battery. Leave it plugged in, give a Tesla the time that you're due to depart, and it will precondition everything and help improve your battery life and your battery distance that you can travel. So for those people in cold weathers, use the preconditioning a lot. It helps. So here's a little bonus tip. As I mentioned earlier on the speed slowing down, it creates less wind resistance. There's a little app called Windy, W-I-N-D-Y, Windy. And when you go into that app, it gives you the wind direction for where you are. And you can use that to understand that I'm going to be traveling with the wind, so that I will get a few extra kilometers out of the battery going in that direction. Or if it's blowing into the direction of travel, so you got a headwind, you're not going to get as far. So I've just looked on Windy app, and if I was heading south from where I am, say down to Albany or down that way, Margaret River, I would have a tailwind, so I would get a bit further. But if I was living down in Margaret River coming up to Perth, I would have a headwind, so I would use a bit more power. And you can adjust things accordingly. Slow down if you're going into a headwind, because it will make quite a bit of difference. Here is the app Windy, and as you can see, if you zoom in a bit, it gives you the direction of the air currents. So if you look there, Perth, at the moment the direction has changed, so it's now heading in a northeasterly direction. Not half an hour ago it was heading in a southeasterly direction. But you can tell from this where the wind is heading, and that may help you plan your trip to be a little bit more effective. So there's 10 little tips and tricks, I think it was 10, that you can use to help maximize the range of your electric vehicle. I hope you found it useful, so please like and subscribe. And also, if you have a look at my channel, I've got a couple of other channels that I recommend on electric vehicles, renewable energy and computer programming. So go to my channel, have a look and see. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you.